Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Katie Rochette with Continuing the Conversation, part 2 of my conversation with Maya Paige Cooke. If you haven't already gone back and watched the first one, you definitely want to make sure you do that because Maya has such an amazing story. Her life has definitely had its ups and downs, and it's always fascinating when you get to hear somebody share their story firsthand and ask the questions that you might not normally get to ask. And it kind of just helps give yourself a different perspective on life. And so it was a really great conversation. And once we got to know her a little bit more, we segued into talking all things Black Lives Matter and what it really means to be Black in America right now, the current political, cultural climate, as well as what are some of the things that people like me, white people, we can do to educate ourselves and how we can help and how we can get involved and stuff. So I definitely think you're going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, here is continuing the conversation part 2, being Black in America with Maya Paige Cooke.
I love stereotypes and I love people who debunk stereotypes because I love the anomaly of it. But then I also hate when stereotypes are used as an excuse for judgment or for pain and stuff like that. But having to find that balance between, yeah, stereotypes are there for a reason because they're probably rooted in some amount of truth. But when does that stereotype become harmful? And how do we navigate those kind of situations of acknowledging the truth of the stereotype, but then also acknowledging the pain of the stereotype?
Yeah, of course. I have a love-hate relationship with stereotypes because it's one of those things where like you'll find within the Black community that we use those back and forth at each other as jokes like countless amounts of times. I can't even like tell you how many times we like with my family we joke about, oh, she's running on CP time, it's fine, like she'll be here in the next like half hour or whatever. She always wakes up late, it's fine. Like things like that where it's just like it's meant to be humorous. But I guess the problem the problem is when it comes to people outside of the Black community saying things of that nature, you do have like there are eggshells that you need to feel out, because a lot of things that involve race when coming from somebody that is not of that particular race can be hurtful and can be harmful, because we need to remember all of these stereotypes are rooted in, just what they are. They're stereotypes. So they've come about with the intent to be harmful, because not all Black women are aggressive. Not all Black men are in gangs, like things like that, which are meant to define one particular race as a way of sort of, I guess, being able to know a person before you really know a person. So you already have an idea of how they're going to operate before you approach them. When we start moving into personality stereotypes, the ghetto chick, the sapphire, the Jezebel, the thug, the gangster, things like that, 100% harmful when used in the wrong context, and arguably when used at all, because especially coming from, being a Black woman, I've tried to not be aggressive, not to show my anger, not to show that I'm like visibly upset about something said to me or something that I've seen, because automatically I'm stamped as a threat. For the rest of our lives, we're known as, oh, the one who, gets mad whenever somebody uses the N-word, or gets mad whenever she's, somebody makes a comment on her fro. And it's very difficult living with those kinds of stereotypes because you have to police yourself. And I think it's very unfair to have to police yourself and not be who you are in order to be comfortable and in order to drive the, your own personality and who you are and get that across to people. But the second you slip up, the second you get upset that somebody's touching your hair, you get upset that I guess barista has given you the wrong drink the third time you've been to that particular cafe. Like you get upset at those things and you speak out about it, boom, labeled.
It's almost like your actions have to now suddenly be defined for the entire community.
Yeah.
So you getting angry isn't just, oh, you're the angry Black woman, it's all Black women are angry.
Yep.
Versus as a white person, yeah, I might be labeled as angry at times or a bit outspoken, but nobody's going to take that character of me and attribute it to everyone who looks like me.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, oh, I knew Black women were hard-headed, or I knew Black women were this way, or I knew Black men were gonna do this one day. They always do. Like, it's whenever one of us does something, it automatically lays the groundwork for the rest of us. And that's also something that's damaging as far as the Black community is concerned, because not all of us are that way. Not all of us are mean, just like not all white people are mean, just like not all Black people like watermelon, just like all Black people don't like fried chicken. Like, the community is so diverse, and it's insulting to label everyone the same when we're all built up of many different experiences, and we have different characters and different personalities and different interests. Like, I went so long without getting like twists or braids put in my hair. I didn't wear wigs. I didn't like braiding my hair because I was like, those are seen as ghetto. But like, in reality, I love the way braids look. I love wearing twists. Like, people should be allowed to wear wigs when they don't feel like doing their hair. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, these are things that make us comfortable. Why are we putting a negative label on those things in order to be uncomfortable to make other people feel comfortable? You know what I mean? Like, especially the whole hair discrimination in the workplace. We just passed a law that makes that illegal. That's crazy.
Now we're kind of getting into this place where it's like, okay, the racism of our world is very much on blast right now. We are very acutely aware of it, and we have all these things that we're trying to do to help. Diversity in the workplace being one of them. And so as a white person, I am acutely aware of how many more white people in our workplace there are than Black. Being excited about, the fact that, we are going to hire somebody to be on TV who is going to be a person of color. And I don't know a lot about them yet. But I do know they're Black, because that's obviously the first thing we saw when we saw the picture. So it's like, and then there's this weird sense of excitement. But then it's like, is that almost like reverse racism in the sense that like now I'm too focused on race and wanting to like diversify, and that, now I'm like, okay, do we only hire Black people because we need to raise the number of Black people in our work environment? And it's all these like really weird, hard questions that I don't even know how to ask in a way that I feel like makes sense, which is why I think I'm rambling right now. But like, I just have so much confusion around this topic of diversity in the workplace, and how do we make it diverse without singling out Black people?
Well, in a sense, you have to. See, and here's my take on it. Being anti-racist is not ignoring color. In fact, it's the opposite. I feel like in order to have diversity, you must acknowledge who you have in your work environment in particular, and acknowledge what you need to do to, not make it stagnant. What can we do to make sure that viewers aren't seeing the same skin color on TV? What can we do to make sure that our own employees are, diversified enough to where we have just as many brown skin, black skin individuals as we do white or fair skin individuals? How can we amend the situation to where everybody is comfortable because everybody sees themselves in each other? So I think it's very important to recognize the color of somebody's skin, but not allow that to dictate how you treat that person. I think it's very important to recognize race as far as like a workplace is concerned, as far as representation is concerned, because that's how you begin to make change, and that's how you allow your environment to, show a multitude of individuals who come from different backgrounds, which is also important.
I feel this weight of like knowing that I'm going to have certain privileges given to me just because of how I look. And there's this weird sense of like, I can't use my looks in any sort of advantage. So I feel the need to work 10 times harder so that people know I get hired because of my brains, not the way I look. Or I feel guilty, that I do look the way I look because did I get the job over somebody else who doesn't look like me, and things like that. And there's just like this internal struggle that I feel knowing that I look how society thinks women should look.
Right. I commend you on that, because the first step in that is recognizing that there is privilege that you have right off the bat because of your skin color. However, because you recognize that privilege, you should not feel guilty. Because at the end of the day, you are more likely, because you recognize that, to try and change it when you see it happening, as opposed to somebody who's completely oblivious to the fact that the system favors and, uplifts that individual because of their skin color. And it's going to sound so weird coming out, but just bear with me. Because you feel guilty, you shouldn't feel guilty. You should not feel guilty because you recognize that you have privilege. The fact that you recognize your privilege is commendable. It should be applauded, because you're more well equipped to do something about other people who don't have that privilege.
So that'll kind of segue into another question that I have about my desire to diversify my friend group, knowing that like growing up, I lived in that very whitewashed community. And so as I've grown up, you go to college, you get more experiences, you have a more diverse workplace. It's this idea that like I intentionally want to befriend people who don't look like me. And then there's this part of me that's like, wait, is that racist? Because my first thought was, when I saw that we were hiring another Black woman, it's like, oh, I really want to be her friend. I want to get to know her. But I don't necessarily have the same thoughts when we've hired other white people, because in my mind, I'm like, well, I have a lot of white friends. I don't need any more white friends, And so I want to make sure that I'm guarded against my own subconscious when it comes to wanting to diversify, and how do I go about navigating that?
I feel like diversifying within friend groups is like the best thing for any individual to have, because friends, one, you connect on a more personal level, and then they're giving you their side of the story of living, basically. You're getting a new perspective. You're hearing about experiences that you've never had to deal with, and that goes so far as like personal development and how you as a person change to be better. There's something to be said about wanting to have a friend who doesn't look like you. And I don't think that's racist at all, especially when it's coming from a place of they seem like a wonderful person. They also have something that I see in them that's positive, and that's probably going to turn me into a better individual. And there's nothing wrong with that mentality whatsoever. It's all about where your mind's at and wanting to diversify friend groups. Like, are you wanting to befriend them to say you have a Black friend? Or are you wanting to befriend them because, they're Black and they have a perspective on life that you've never been in tune to, and that you want to hear so much about, and you want to get to know this person on a deeper level to understand, what their struggles are, how they've developed as a person, and most importantly, can you both benefit from each other mentally in a sense? Like, can you feed off of one another? Can you learn something new that goes both ways? How is this friendship going to turn you into a better human being because of that connection?
Give yourself a little bit of that realistic perspective when it comes to diversifying your friend group, is that you're not looking to put any sort of unwanted pressure on that person to be the best friend in your life. It's really just acknowledging the fact that you want to be able to have diverse people that you can go and grab a coffee with, or that you can text and check in on, and not always want to talk about the Black culture, Black problems, Black struggle, whatever. It's like you don't want to like only talk to your Black friend about being Black. Like, hopefully that goes
Right.
without saying, but it's just true. It's just like, getting to know them for who they are and what they like and their personality. And then the fact that they're Black only becomes just like a side benefit, I guess, to your own perspective, so that once you've connected over the fact that you both love Twilight, now you can go ahead and start talking about, what they thought of, a Black Lives Matter protest, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. 100%, yes.
Not being racist is not the same thing as being anti-racist. And let's talk about how silence can hurt just as much as overt racism.
As far as, being non-racist and, versus anti-racist, the big difference between the two is you can definitely be non-racist, but when somebody in front of you is racist, you don't say anything about it. You may not hold those particular values or those particular ideas or opinions, but your silence on those issues and on those topics when they are brought in front of you, when they're being spewed at your face, and not saying anything about it is compliance. Anti-racist is that activism. Anti-racist is speaking up when you hear something that's wrong, that's stereotypical, and it's harmful to the Black image or the Indian image, Hispanic image, saying things out loud that go against that mentality is anti-racist. That's why that is much better than being non-racist, because non-racist can also be considered racist. Because if I'm sitting here and I hear Tim over here talking about how all Black people are the N-word, all Black people are this, all Black people like watermelon, and I have Tabitha over here being quiet, I'm going to think that she agrees with him because of the sheer fact that she's not saying anything in regards to not agreeing. And that, I think, especially now with the reignited Black Lives Matter movement, people I've considered friends on Facebook, quiet. And it makes me think, do you have a problem with me? Even though you're not saying anything, that doesn't matter. The sheer fact that you're not saying anything, that you're not speaking out against it, makes me believe that we're not really friends because of the fact that you might view me in that way. Because now, especially currently, anti-racist has become the norm. That's the term that we use in order to let people know, hey, I don't like that they depict you this way. I don't like that they're saying this about your race. I don't like that they're labeling every single Black person this way just because of something that one person did. That's not fair. That's not right, because I wouldn't want it to happen to myself. That's why I'm speaking out against this, because I know you and I know other people who share your skin color, who share your complexion, and I know that you are not like that. Therefore, that's not okay. It's not okay to say that all Black people carry guns and shoot and are part of gangs. That's not okay, because we're not. There's a, like, looking at percentages, the percentage of Black people who actually participate in gangs is very insignificant to the broader population of Black people. And the reason that it feels like it's so much is because when you turn on the TV, when you're watching shows, when you're watching the media, whenever they're referring to a Black person, it's in regards to shooting. It's in regards to killing. It's in regards to violence. They're showing the minority, just like with many other depictions in the media.
And I think too, and this is something that I think is important for white people to do, is to use your imagination a little bit, and role play through scenarios that might very well happen around you, to you, in your life, in your workplace, in your neighborhood and stuff. Because a lot of the times, and this is, I don't think that, I'm not putting blame because we've all been there, a lot of the times things happen out of the blue and we're not ready to respond. And so when things happen and when things are said, we're taken off guard and we have this natural self-preservation response of, I don't want to confront. The confrontation of something that somebody said is not going to benefit me, and it's going to cause conflict, and so I'd rather just not say anything. I think what happens is we're not educated enough and we're not prepared enough to give a response. And that's something that we need to be challenging ourselves to do, so that the next time somebody in your workplace uses the N-word or uses a stereotype, to accuse all Black people of something, already what it is that you're going to say, and be ready to say it, consequences be damned. You know what I mean? Because it's something that is that important to you. And then you don't have to live with the guilt of not speaking.
But I do want to go switch over to the topic of the N-word too, because you had brought that up. I am not gonna lie, I have definitely used the word myself, but there is a difference between Black people using that word and non-Black people using the word. There has been, just like with many words that are considered negative in vocabulary, there's been a reclaiming of the N-word for Black people, because the history of the N-word is harmful, it's hurtful, it's a slur, it's a derogatory term used to hurt Black people and used to label them as aggressive and dirty and stupid and, they go hand in hand, but unintelligent, unaware. Basically just a body. And the Black community, most members of the Black community have tried so hard to reclaim that word and change it to where when we use it, it's not hurtful, it's not harmful, which is why it's sort of taken on the role as, in the same vein as calling somebody a buddy or a friend. It's taken on that kind of, definition now, which some people think it's great. Some people just want to eradicate the word altogether. Both sides, I completely understand. However, there is a difference between a Black person using that word to call somebody a buddy and a non-Black person using that word to other people, and especially to Black people. I don't support that at all, because of the sheer fact that the origin of the word comes from white mouths. Therefore, in my opinion, the definition of that word doesn't change when coming from a white mouth. It's derogatory. It's hurtful. When it's said, you pause for a second and you wonder, should I be offended about this? Because initially, that's my response. I'm offended that you use that word to describe me or anybody else. Because historically, that word being used by white people was used to hurt somebody, used to hurt Black people. I'm not okay with that. I think that when it comes to saying the word, the context, no matter how a white person may mean it or a non-Black person may mean it, is still hurtful, because they don't have the same history with it that Black people do, to where it's okay for them to reclaim it the same way that we do. It does not hold the same by any means.
So I am going to ask a question then, because I want the rebuttal out there, and I want the answer out there, and it has to do with that word and a conversation that I've had with somebody, and talking and trying to explain the N-word and why it's not okay for white people to say it versus Black people. And this person's comment had to do with well, that doesn't sound very equal, and isn't that what Black people want? Is they want equality. It sounds like they want special treatment. Why, they want equality and all these different things, but they're going to set themselves apart, and they're going to give themselves something that white people can't have. And I was taken aback, and it was one of those comments that I didn't have an answer for. I couldn't explain it, and as I've been wrestling with it for the last couple of months, I still don't have an answer, because there is this thought of well, yeah, I mean, I guess we do want equality. We all want equality. That doesn't sound very equal. If one group can say it and one group can't, where do we come up with the answer to that confusion?
Yeah, that I've heard that one too. And my answer to that question is, how is it equal for you to be able to call me a slur?
Mm-hmm.
I don't call you a slur.
Mm-hmm.
The reason Black people use the word now is because that word has been thrown at us for centuries upon centuries. Men, women, children, babies. Why is it that out of the entire English language, one word we don't want you to say because it's hurtful, it's mentally damaging? One word, and there's a problem. So my thing about the whole equality part of it all, it just kind of makes me laugh a little bit because there's nothing equal about it. Like my equality, our joint equality is not being able to use a word that's derogatory toward Black people. In fact, I think that's the opposite. I will consider us equal if you don't use that word to me, because that word in itself presents a hierarchy that favors white people. So if and on top of that, I was having this conversation with I think one of my cousins the other day, how there's no equal slur for white people. So already, like, and thinking about it in that way, like, okay, well, if there was one, you should let me call you that one. How do you feel now?
Yeah.
You don't feel good. That's why it's not okay. Because if I had a word to call you that was so hurtful,
Yeah.
was so demeaning, so dehumanizing, and just blatantly rude, if I had a word to call you that was equivalent to the N-word and I used it, would you like it? Exactly.
Right.
That's where that line is.
Yeah. And the only minuscule, teeny tiny little bit of like understanding and how I can put it in context of something that like I might understand is I've never liked being called dumb because of the dumb blonde stereotype. You know, it is, like I said, very, very minuscule. I'm not trying to equate it to the N-word by any means, but there is still this sense that like when you call me dumb, I really think it's because I'm blonde. That's what I'm assuming you're assuming about me. Not because I really did say a stupid comment or I had a lapse of judgment or I, lacked common sense in something or I tripped down the stairs or up the stairs, which happens more times than I know, and that's dumb. Like, you know what I mean? But at the same time, there are certain people who who can joke and call me that. And then there are other people who I'm like, what do you mean I'm dumb? Like, have I not proved to you that I'm not dumb? Do I have enough degrees? Do I have enough career experience? Do I have enough articulate conversations with you to prove to you that I'm not dumb? So when you call me that, my first thought is like, oh, the dumb blonde joke. And I've laughed at dumb blonde jokes, like I think they are funny, but again, that's a stereotype that you have to be very cautious against. Right. The truth of that is that, there are blonde people out there, men and women, who are dumb AF. They just are, they just are, but that is not because they are dumb. They are just themselves. And sometimes they got dropped on their head a few too many times, Yeah. It's
right.
like one of those things that it's just be careful. And I like to say that, as an example to hopefully other white people, where it's like, you may not be able to relate and to the N word and the Black people struggle around that word. But there are things in your life that you do not like to be called by certain people, and I know one of the common examples is like, the terms of endearment, like babe, sweetie, honey. Your significant other, your boyfriend, your husband, they call you that, not a big deal. The man on the street, the ex-boyfriend that you don't want in your life anymore calls you that, like, that's a little nails on the chalkboard. Now, again, it's not a word that, you're now assigning to an entire culture or race of people that they can use and other people can't. So I understand the difference there, but just, put it into perspective of the words that you have been told that you don't like. And I think hopefully that's where we can find some of that mutual understanding and acceptance that, you know what, I'm just not going to say it. Like, it is not my word. And like you said, there are how many other words in the English language that I can use to describe people? I don't need to use that word.
Exactly.
Where do you point people who want to go and learn more and to get more educated? What are your favorite books? What are your favorite movies? What are the TV shows that you're like, these are great places to start and to continue with your own education?
Yes. I, for one, I'm a film major, so movies are like my outlet. They're my escape. They're also my source of like education. One that I highly, highly recommend, and it's more so like the experience of Black women, is what the film derives from, because there's a lack of representation and like a broader experience of what it's like to be Black in America and what it's like to be a Black woman in America. One movie that I highly, highly recommend is For Colored Girls. Phenomenal movie. Tyler Perry does a wonderful job. It's very poetic. It's very artistic. The cast is amazing. I mean, like, you have Tessa Thompson, there's Michael Ealy, there's Loretta Devine, like so many amazing Black actresses and actors in that movie, and it's I highly recommend it. There aren't many depictions of Black characters in,
especially Black characters as the protagonist, because
yes.
I think, and I mean, this is again one of those like sidebar things about the token Black friend, the token Asian person, the token this, you know, you've got your main character is white, and yes, to show that we are diverse and inclusive, they're going to have a Black friend, and
Yes.
that's it. So like I think that's very, very important to be aware of, and knowing that that's not racist, but it's just not right, and it doesn't accurately portray America.
Yeah, we're Black people are more than just a supporting character. We have our own lives that we experience. We have a vastly different experience in the world than other people, or like that can be said for everybody. I'm not just saying that like, oh, Black people only have a like, you know, a unique experience. That's not true at all. But I'm saying that that's so underrepresented in media, to where it's important to recognize that Black people go through different things on a day-to-day basis that are different from their white counterpart, from their other POCs. So it's also very important to understand that not all narratives of Black people focus on thugs and like fast money and drugs and things like that. I think that's so, while that's a part of it, that's a part of every race. Like everybody is involved in that. So I don't understand why it's so prominent for like Black culture, because literally everybody's out there like dealing drugs and doing things like that. So that's like beyond me. But as far as like other movies go, on Netflix, Jacob's Ladder, the remake with Michael Ealy, phenomenal movie. Focuses on, you know, it's a psychological film, so it focuses on the treatment of like military vets in the system, and it's very, it really makes you think, and it's a hard-hitting film, and it's emotional. But as far as literature goes, anything Toni Morrison, Octavia Butler, Zora Neale Hurston for what is it, for Of Mules and Men. A favorite of mine that's fiction is Kindred by Octavia Butler. Oh my gosh, that's probably my favorite book by her. It focuses on, I think it's set in like the 70s or 80s, focuses on a Black woman and her white boyfriend, and the narrative follows her journey of time travel. And then obviously there's the list of movies that you should avoid, like, you know, The Help, other movies that focus on like that white savior complex.
The hell, the poop pie.
Great addition. But it's also you know, it's focus on finding literature and movies that don't uphold this white savior complex, because while it's great to acknowledge that there are allies, don't forget that the focus is on the Black experience, and it's not about like, it's not necessarily about having a white individual be your voice for your people, because that can sort of get lost in translation, which is the big issue. But, you know, focusing on articles of, you know, works from Black people, Black authors, Black filmmakers, people who are trying to get the Black experience out on film in a unique way is also very important, aside from doing the usual, you know, cut and dry material that has been out there for Black people. Obviously, Spike Lee is also a good filmmaker to look out for, because he has some very raw material that he likes to work with, and I'm a big fan of. So just, focus on I like to say focus on the more blatant and raw works that don't sugarcoat anything. And that's where some of your best information is going to come from.
So there you have it. That is part 2 of continuing my conversation with Maya Paige Cooke. I hope you enjoyed listening to her just as much as I enjoyed talking to her. And guess what? This is really just the beginning. I plan to have more of these conversations with people who come from different backgrounds than I do, who look different than I do, and hopefully together we can really continue to educate ourselves and make ourselves better just by knowing the people who are in our life. With all of that to be said, I hope you stick around, subscribe to my page, because there is so much more to come. Take care.